to relocate. Now, here's where things get interesting. In the Bay Area, housing is extremely expensive, and my parents just so happened to have a house, very nice big one, right near Facebook campus, maybe 20 minutes away or so, and we had a dog and a child, so we needed a place that we were very particular about because our child had allergies to a lot of things, carpeting for instance, and for our dog Sunny, we needed a pet-friendly apartment. It's just extremely hard to find something like this. And so I told my ex, well hey, we can either go live in a crappy shoebox apartment that probably could be a health hazard for our child and could make our dog miserable, or we could go live with our parents. We would save a lot of money, $3,000 to $4,000 per month, normally that we would have to pay in rent. And I said, well, we could save that for any furniture you want. Like you're dreaming about Pottery Barn furniture, we can save for that. And meanwhile, we can be looking for an actual house that we can buy or just for another apartment. It would just give us more time. And I never pressured her into this agreement, but she agreed and she thought it might be fun to try it out. And at the time, relationships between everybody was great. My parents really welcomed her in. Now, as you may guess, what happened is in-law relationships, they never seem to go quite as well as planned. I don't know why, it could just be nature. But over the course of a few weeks, my in-laws and my wife, they just weren't getting along. They were rubbing each other the wrong way. They were perhaps trying to dominate each other, and relationships really started to melt down there. I did not really notice it because I was so busy with my job, doing my YouTube thing on the side, until I just realized that people weren't getting along at all, which is a really hard position for me to be in. Now, what's frustrating is at the time we were also looking into buying a house, so we became very desperate in our bidding. Like we would bid on houses that may be completely burned down, and then we'd say, well, we can just renovate it. And these are expensive houses in the Bay Area. We would bid beyond our range and say, well, maybe we can rent out half of the house and recover some of our costs that way. It just didn't feel like these decisions were really that rational. And meanwhile, the apartment hunting, that just wasn't going so well. We tried, but we're quite picky in what we're looking for. Now, to make matters worse, in my opinion, my ex started making decisions that were not safe for our child. Because relationships were not good at home, she would take our son and just drive him around all day. It surprised me one day when I realized that as soon as I left for work, she left too. And then when I came back from work, she would come back a little bit later and she would have been out the whole day with my kid. And I just felt that that wasn't so safe. So I complained about this, and she decided one day that she would go over to Japan. And she took my son over there, and I thought, okay, fine, they're gonna go on a little vacation trip. While she was out, she actually told me that she would not come back until I could secure another place for her. So I began scrambling and looking at houses that I could buy. And we wanted to buy a house, but with this type of leverage in hand and the short timeline, because I really wanted to see my son again, I decided to buy this apartment, this place, $4,000 a month. Now that's way beyond my price range that I'm used to. Our last apartment was $2,800, so this was a big jump up. But I thought, well, hey, maybe it's worth it, right? Maybe this can satisfy her. Over 12 months, it's essentially a $50,000 deal present for her. And I thought that she would come back and she would be delighted. Unfortunately, when she came back, she was still embittered and angry at my parents and decided to cut my whole side of the family off. Which is okay, like I can try to work with that. But it became strange when she started inviting her side of the family over. She would invite her mother over, and then we would be doing vacation trips, and just started not feeling really fair. And I realized in-laws don't have the best relationships. That's fine. I'm not asking for anybody to be best buddies here. But I think that people need to have some workable relationship, at least be on talking terms here. Now, there are some people who would cut off their in-laws, which I wouldn't really recommend. I think people should just be happy and love each other. Life is so short as it is, and everybody is suffering, so just make it a better place. But besides the emotional hurt it causes from taking away somebody's grandchild, there are also issues with wealth management, inheritance. So since my ex-wife decided to cut off my parents, and coincidentally at the same time my parents were setting up a living trust in which funds would go through me and into her, I asked my ex-wife what we should do about the inheritance. And it's pretty sizable because my parents they've done well in their life as well. She actually said she didn't want any part of that inheritance. She wanted to be out of that will. That required me to start looking into setting up a living trust, which is just another complete hassle and pain to get through. Not to mention, I did not personally like the idea of, let's say I suddenly die. All of my assets would probably just disappear and go into Japan. My ex-wife and our son, she would just take him into Japan, and they would never see or talk to my family ever again. They would just disappear into that land of the rising sun. which it's okay kind of, but it's also not quite the legacy that I had in mind, right? It's not really the cause that I have been trying to support. It doesn't represent what I live for. I really value family and relationships, and I wish people would just get along with that. So that's not personally the type of legacy that I would enjoy. Besides that, there are a number of tax benefits you can get. Number one, if you didn't know, in an inheritance event, all cost bases get stepped up. So if your parents have like a house that appreciated a lot in value, normally they would have to pay a lot of capital gains on that. If you inherit any asset like that, and it can be stocks as well that may have appreciated a lot, then the cost basis gets stepped up such that you will pay no taxes on that. The only way to take advantage of this though is that you need to have good relationships with your parents in which they will leave you something. What we're talking about here is intergenerational wealth, which is funny. That's a term that I think many young people do not care about or think about. Maybe because they're poor or their parents are poor, or so they don't think about it. But once you start having some assets, it's something that you think about and care about a little bit, like all the work that you put in over your lifetime and that your parents